Valentine's Day as the world paused to celebrate love. Moments of warmth unfolded even in the coldest corners of Europe. Yet beyond the symbolism of affection and unity, global headlines told a far more complex story. From the battle-scarred corridors of Eastern Europe, where governance and survival remains intertwined, to renewed diplomatic maneuvering between Washington and Tehran amid nuclear tensions, the international landscape continues to shift. In the United States, long-running questions surrounding elite accountability resurfaced once again, reopening debates about transparency and power. And in Ukraine, where war already strains institutions, corruption allegations remind the world that reform and resilience must move hand in hand. Welcome to the Flash News. I'm Star Smart. Let's begin. While much of the world marked Valentine's Day with flowers and candlelit dinners, dozens of winter swimmers in Poland chose a far more daring expression of affection, plunging into the icy waters of the Baltic Sea. Along the northern coast in cities such as Gdańsk and Sopot, members of Poland's growing winter swimming community, often referred to as Morsi or walruses, gathered in festive red attire to celebrate the season of love with a bracing deep into near-freezing waters. Now, for participants, the tradition is not simply about spectacle. Winter swimming has become a cultural phenomenon in Poland associated with resilience, health benefits, and community bonding.
Woda była cudowna, wspaniała, super kąpiel, wcale się nie odczuwa zimna, a wręcz przeciwnie, jest ciepło, jest cudownie, jest piękna pogoda.
That's a glimpse of what it felt like for this walrus season, Morses. Well, medical professionals have cautioned, though, that ice swimming carries risk, including hypothermia and cardiac stress, particularly for those with underlying conditions. Yet enthusiasts argue that when done safely and gradually, it only strengthens immunity, boosts circulation, and improves mental well-being. Now, in recent years, especially after pandemic lockdowns, cold water swimming has surged in popularity across Europe as a symbol of endurance and collective spirit. The Valentine's plunge, therefore, reflects something deeper than seasonal celebration. It speaks to a society embracing unconventional traditions, redefining connection, not just romantically, but communally. A reminder that even in harsh winter conditions, warmth can be found in shared experience. Now on to the rest of the globe. We see in Ukraine that Ukrainian authorities have detained a former energy minister while he was reportedly attempting to leave the country in connection with a large-scale corruption investigation. And this is what the president of Ukraine had to say about it.
Будь-які результативні дії проти корупції дуже потрібні. Невідворотність покарання потрібна. Енергоатом забезпечує Україні найбільшу частку енергогенерації зараз. Чистота в компанії – це
Well, the case is tied to alleged financial irregularities involving state energy enterprises, a sector that has long been vulnerable to opaque contracts, political influence, and oligarchic interest. Ukraine's energy industry remains strategically critical, especially amid the ongoing war with Russia. Since Moscow's invasion, energy infrastructure has been repeatedly targeted, leaving millions vulnerable to blackouts and heating shortages. In such a context, allegations of corruption carry heightened political weight. The detention signals Kyiv's continued efforts to demonstrate accountability and reform, particularly as Ukraine seeks deeper integration with the European Union and sustained Western financial support. Anti-corruption reforms are central to Ukraine's EU accession ambition. Brussels has repeatedly stressed that transparency in public administration, especially in key sectors like energy, is non-negotiable. The implications extend beyond domestic politics. International partners funding Ukraine's reconstruction and military defense are closely watching governance standards. Any perception that corruption persists at high levels could complicate diplomatic backing and financial aid. Even as the country fights for survival, we see this happening in Ukraine. Now, on to the United States, we see its Department of Justice has sent Congress a list of politically exposed persons drawn from millions of the Epstein files, millions of documents connected to investigations into convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the Department of Justice says it has complied fully with the requirements of the Epstein Files Transparency Act. However, lawmakers from both parties argue that the disclosures fall short of public expectations, and there has been much of arguments like this with the congressman.
Like former Prince Andrew, Donald Trump attended various parties with Jeffrey Epstein. I want to know, were there any underage girls at that party or at any party that Trump attended with Jeffrey Epstein?
This is so ridiculous, and that they are trying to deflect from all the great things Donald Trump has done. There is no evidence that Donald Trump has committed a crime. Everyone knows that. This has been the most transparent presidency. He's the one that asked that those files.
I'm claim my time. I got your answer.
Well, critics contend that releasing a list of names without full contextual documentation leaves significant questions unanswered. They've called for broader transparency, including clearer explanations of the extent of each individual's connection to Epstein. The case continues to generate intense public scrutiny years after Epstein's death in federal custody in 2019. Conspiracy theories, unresolved questions about elite networks, and ongoing litigation have kept the matter politically sensitive. The debate now centers on the balance between transparency and privacy rights, whether naming individuals without clear evidence of wrongdoing risks unfair reputational harm, or whether withholding information perpetuates distrust. But then at stake is not only the legacy of the Epstein investigation, but also public confidence in institutions. In an era marked by polarization and declining trust, how authorities handle such disclosures could shape perceptions of accountability at the highest levels of power. Well, more with the United States. With Iran, we see Iran's foreign minister arrived in Geneva ahead of the second round of indirect negotiations with the United States. According to Iranian state media, the talks mediated by Oman come amid sustained pressure from Washington and heightened regional tensions. Tehran describes the discussions as limited to nuclear issues, while the United States officials have signaled interest in broadening the agenda to include Iran's ballistic missile program and its support for regional armed groups. These differences in scope reflect the fragile and complex nature of the negotiations. Diplomatic engagement resumed after earlier talks collapsed following an unprecedented Israeli bombing campaign against Iranian targets last year, an escalation that sharply raised fears of a broader regional conflict. The renewed dialogue now unfolds against the backdrop of mutual suspicion, economic sanctions, and military posturing. The stakes are considerable. A revived nuclear agreement could ease sanctions on Iran, stabilize global energy markets, and reduce the risk of military confrontation in the Middle East. Failure, however, could deepen regional instability and further entrench divisions between Tehran and Western powers. Now, as diplomats reconvene in Geneva in a bid to bridge years of mistrust and secure a peaceful path forward, the world watches closely. whether these talks will ease tensions or stall amid deep-seated mistrust, and that remains uncertain. What is clear, however, is that the outcome holds wide-ranging implications from regional stability and global energy markets to the future course of international diplomacy. In a moment marked by geopolitical complexity, these negotiations only underscore a simple truth, that in an interconnected world, even distant capitals can shape life far beyond their borders. Well, this has been the Flash News. Thank you for watching. We'll leave you with ABC Amba TV images. Have a great day.